All right. So, hey y'all, I'm Bree, and we are going to do a emotions and oils class. Typically, it's also called a feelings class. However, you're more comfortable. One of the most important and powerful use for essential oils can be for the brain or emotions. It's where oils really get to show off the most compared to other applications, as most of the time it's going to help more consistently for people than it would, say, in a more physical aspect. When you diffuse an oil, you get that to the body faster than you will get it in any other manner. Not to mention, you're not just going to get it on a specific part of your body. It's going to go straight to the brain within 3 seconds. It takes 26 seconds to absorb if you're applying it to the skin topically. It says working through 7 layers of skin and muscle tissue and past the body's defense systems to get into the bloodstream. Typically, I do both. I like to diffuse and use topically. It just depends on what I'm feeling at the time. And sometimes I use them internally as well, but normally I'm more of a aromatic or topical application type person. It says oils enter the nasal cavity past the olfactory membranes at the top of the nose and go straight through the blood-brain barrier. They are fast moving, and I don't know about you, but I don't want a cheap oil get into my brain real quick like that. So that's why I use Young Living, because it has the seed to seal promise and it's something my family can trust. Oil molecules are smaller than viruses. That means they can cross the blood-brain barrier and have access to the limbic lobe of the brain, which is the emotional control center of the entire human body. Oil molecules, I jumped to the wrong spot. When it comes to the more wordy things, I struggle, so I can tell you about it all day long. It's not that any one oil will cure these things that can give you, say, some stress or cause some uncomfortable tummies when you're just having a rough day, but it can help you process the emotions so that you're able to work through them and not bury them. So they're not gone, but they're just more copable. I don't know if that's a word. Easier to cope with. The goal is to get you to think to oil without thinking about it. For me, I have multiple different rollers. My favorite one has Valor and Joy blend with some carrier, and often I will go ahead and just roll that on when I literally have nothing else in me to take that first step to get moving. I'll just roll it on behind my ears, on my wrist, over my heart. And that's the first step to be able to take the next step, to go drink some water, eat a healthy snack. And then maybe after that, I'll be able to go take a shower. It's just that reflex of oiling typically can help me get moving and going, but it starts with the oiling. So give me that oomph. Half that battle is just putting the oils on your body or diffusing them in the air or throwing a drop of lime in your water, whatever that may be. It's just getting that going first. It says, let's start with the tools to emotionally release. The Young Living founder, late Gary Young, developed the Feelings Protocol. And that collection contains 6 5-milliliter bottles of emotional oils that include Harmony, Forgiveness, Inner Child, Release, and Valor. Valor is a top oil in our household for me, Brendan, and Ash, which is my husband and my daughter. if you are new to me watching this at the replay, um, that is what I call liquid courage in a bottle. It's known to help balance the limbic system and the spirit as well. So that one is really big with like energies, just so they're in line. And it says here, you can also put valor on the soles of both feet at nighttime, along with highest potential for the step of the feelings protocol. The next oil is harmony. It says massage one drop of harmony along 7 points of the body that follow the spine: the coccyx, the sacrum, the lumbar, the dorsal or the heart, the cervical where the neck meets the shoulder, and the medulla, the hollow place at the center base of the skull. So like right back here. And the pineal, or the center of the forehead. Harmony balances the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, which gives us feelings of confidence. And Gary says the biggest sin is not having confidence in yourself. He who lacks confidence lacks life. The next oil in that is forgiveness. It says apply forgiveness oil around the navel with the right hand going clockwise several times. Unforgiveness is one of the most common roots of physical, mental, and spiritual disease. Unforgiveness does not make the offended party sick. It makes us sick. Gary says, 1, forgive yourself for allowing the person to affect your health and happiness. 2, forgive the other person for any harm he or she may have caused you. This need not be done directly with the person being forgiven, but just to yourself. It says, see the good in the situation is number 4. Number 5, be thankful for the experience and the lesson it has taught you. Inhale and apply forgiveness oil while going through these steps. Then repeat as often as necessary to clear the feelings of unforgivingness. I don't know about y'all, but I might have to grab me this one after reading this. I have my notes, but some of it I know by heart. Some of it more like the quotes I've never heard before until I got this. It's really neat. The next one is going to be release, which is one I have a love-hate relationship with. I would use it very sparingly for about 2 or 3 years alongside joy, and I was always like, I really don't want to use it. So it probably only got used like once a year. And in the last probably year and a half, though, I have gone through a lot of inner child work in counseling and just a lot of work on myself and growth. So I've used it quite a bit and I've come to love it. It's really great for getting nitty gritty without having to get as nitty gritty with your emotions. It kind of helps you process it physically, mentally, which we'll also talk about a little bit later in the class. So it's really great. But it says negative energy goes into the blood and then into the liver, where the toxins can remain trapped. The liver becomes a storage place for anger, resentment, bitterness, hatred, jealousy, envy, addictions, and a host of destructive feelings. Don't know about y'all, but that makes a lot of sense to me. Because usually when a person is a heavy alcohol drinker or heavy on drugs, their liver is the first to go. And I'm not going to get too deep into it, but often addicts and alcoholics are using their drug of choice as a coping mechanism, typically for things that are negative in the liver to begin with. So while it's kind of a sad correlation, it does make sense. And the next one is going to be present time. When we live in the past or dwell in the future, we are not being productive in the present. And that I can also relate to really well. I don't have present time, but I do have the next oil that I'll talk about in a second. Something I've worked on probably since early college, so like 17, 18. I try to be present. I try to be content and just in the moment. And it's still often a struggle It's just the thought that has always stuck with me is do the dishes to do the dishes. Not because they have to be clean, not because you don't want dirty dishes in your sink, but just do the dishes to do the dishes, be in that moment. So it says, Gary says to energize 3 drops of present time by making clockwise circles with an oil in the palm of your hand, and then apply it to your thalamus, which is the gland right under your sternum or breastbone. And it will help you keep focus throughout the day and more present. The next one is inner child. One I have carried to many therapy sessions over the last year and a half, working through some things. It says, when you are a child, all things are possible. There are no limitations. And that was from our founder, Gary Young. When you find your inner child, you have found your true self. The child in you is your creativity. I can honestly say that is very true. When your inner child is happy, you at your core are going to be happy. It's amazing thing to feel and just to see as the progression moves along while you do inner child work. If you never have, that is something I will always suggest. If someone struggles, get you a counselor, do some inner child work. It's really great. So just to recap, step 1 is apply valor on the soles of both feet every night. Step 2 is apply harmony, since it may be hard for you to drop oil in 7 places down your spine. So you can also put it on the crown of your head, which is this little spot right behind my bun. So step 3 is apply forgiveness around the navel with the right hand going clockwise. And this, it says here, if you think it's strange, just go right into scripture. There is a precedent for specific application. Leviticus 14:28, and the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, in the place where the blood of the guilt offering was put. So I know some of the people that plan to watch the other aren't religious, but either way, whoever created us, our heart pumps blood clockwise as well. So whether you choose to tie those two together or not, that is both very relevant in my opinion. So you've got spiritual and physical reasons for that. Step 4 is the release. Apply a few drops of relief oil under the tongue or over your liver, VitaFlex points. So it actually didn't even talk about where the VitaFlex points are for the liver, but it's a spot on the foot typically. You can use the hands as well or the ears. You're always welcome to just Google that because that's super easy. Just do feet VitaFlex chart. But you can also just put it directly. I know you can't see me, so I don't know why I'm trying to show you, but it's 2 fingers below your bottom right rib. If you want to put it right over your liver. Next is present time, which is step 5. Apply 3 drops of present time by making a clockwise motion with the oil in the palm of your hand, and then apply it to your thymus, which is right under your breastbone. And then step 6, which is inner child, apply a few drops of inner child to the crown of your head. Understanding the science of how oils work in the brain is my next little section. These are always really neat to me. I like the science behind it all. So how is oil going to have access to your brain? Before we look at each individual, and I actually am going to give you a couple more protocols without going through them fully for releasing emotions, which is assisted and unassisted. I'm going to actually go ahead and tell you some of the science to lay a stronger foundation as to how everything works when you're using oil with your emotions. It says here, the author, so the author of this is Sarah Harnish. It's where I get a lot of my little bitty tidbits that I didn't know. And she says that she once read the average Chicago Tribune Sunday newspaper contains more content than what a person in the 1800s would have experienced in 100 years. One newspaper. We wonder why we're so stressed, y'all. And even still, a week's worth of social media is 100-fold what that newspaper would be. Our brains are constantly stimulated, constantly. So we're always putting in information and we're always sitting there, and whether we notice it or not, having an emotional or a emotional and physical response to what we're taking in. I mean, even if it was a fraction of that, that's why we're exhausted in our 20s and 30s and nowhere near even middle age. Our bodies and brains just can't even comprehend that much information, but it does subconsciously. It says, our body builds emotional responses to what we see, read, hear, and experience. And now we have stored responses that will also repeat again and again until our cells duplicate and copy that bad information. So if you see, let's say you see somebody's post and you're like, I can't stand that. Your body is immediately, when it is triggered, when your brain and body are triggered by that, that's what's going to happen. You're going to go and just be grossed out by it and frustrated and not want to deal with it. Just like your cells reproduce and duplicate, so do the actual emotional responses, because they're ingrained in cells. It says essential oils assist with barriers. When I read that, it just like, whew, essential oils assist with barriers. That's something I worked a lot on, especially in the last 6 months, is boundaries and barriers and healthy relationships. So I feel like that really hit home in terms of a physical barrier for healthy emotions. So it says, if you look at a single molecule, it contains hundreds of constituents. Some of them go by names like aldehydes and esters. Those two in particular are really good at helping calm the nervous system. And it says they allow us to relax instead of bodybuilding and storing emotions. So if you're relaxed, your body is not going to immediately create a physical stored response or even emotional towards something that you're constantly being exposed to. Just lets that memory be a little more calm instead of taking in the negative immediately subconsciously. It says those little molecules help the plants process stress from the essential oils, which a lot of us in the oily community call it plant juice, because that's literally what it is. So when a plant is exposed to stressors, or it's harmed, it's going to send out the essential oils to help protect and heal it. And that is exactly what it's going to do to help your body protect and heal you. I think it's really neat how that works. Call it the life force of the plant. It's just really neat how it all ends up coming together. If you are religious, our creator sat there and thought it through to make this for plants, and it also can help us as humans in many various ways, so that our bodies also can function with stressors very efficiently. What happens when you have a strong emotion? Scientists tell us that they can visibly see the emotion hit the brain like a pebble tossed into a lake when someone is given extreme news. So one of the examples it has here is, say you find out your 15-year-old daughter was pregnant, or that your home had caught fire, something traumatic. they've actually found that they can see it ripple through the brain within seconds so that is a physical representation of emotion. It's not just all thoughts in your head. It says, I cry and it's over. I tuck it away. I forget the pain of something hard, but that's absolutely not the way the body was designed. You may try to block out emotions because it was uncomfortable, but most of the time something is getting stored in your body. And that's where I had touched on earlier, is that emotions can manifest physically in the body. It says here, when an emotion happens, your body enacts its fight or flight. Boom. There we go. Which is going to kick your hormones into overdrive to send out adrenaline, which that's actually the class I had last week, talking about some of that already. But you'd be able to visibly see under a microscope this trauma to the body and the mind. I think that's always so neat because I'm a big psychology nut to begin with. So what happens after the trauma though? It says the body releases some of it, it ignores some of it, it stores some of it as far away from the brain and heart as possible. So I actually did some side research on this because I found it really interesting. Physically, as a fight or flight response, your body is going to store emotions and the negative effects that it has on your body as far away from your heart and brain, because those are the only two completely vital organs for survival to life. So that was really neat. So that's actually typically why it's in the other organs, such as the liver, the bowels, things like that, especially like the gallbladder, the kidneys, most things that we can learn to support our bodies or have medical intervention over probably the last 100 years. If it's an issue, those are also all part of the excretory system typically. So they're getting rid of toxins from our body, be it physically or mentally, manifested physically. Some doctors have actually found that they can find the physical pain spots in people when it's like it's manifested, emotions have manifested in like their back or their knee. They can actually track in what they call somato emotion cysts. Still hadn't put that quite to memory. It says Dr. John Upledger calls wounds like this somato emotional cysts. He said they are a defense response that is encoded, walled off from the rest of the body and never resolved. So we had kind of already touched on this, but I did want to go ahead and read it word for word just because I do find it really important. So the way your body takes protective measures from this physical manifestation of emotion is often through kidney stones, liver stones, and gallstones. They are a buildup of toxic substances that can calcify into a hardened stone or have a chemical reaction that encapsulates them in organs, causing trouble. And then Dr. Candace Pert says, your physical body can be changed by emotions you experience. She says a feeling sparked in your inner mind or body will translate as a peptide being released somewhere. Organs, tissues, skin, muscle, and endocrine glands. They all have peptide receptors on them and can access and store emotional information. This means the emotional memory is stored in many places in the body, not just in the brain. You can access emotional memories anywhere in any peptide receptor network and in any number of ways. Unexpressed emotions are literally lodged in the body. By simply acknowledging emotions, they are expressed. In being expressed, emotions can be released, even old memories stored in the body memory. Allowing my emotions to surface into awareness is the beginning of emotional exploration. I am moving forward to find my position in my family, community, and life. You can literally have emotions stored just about anywhere. And like I said, it's always going to be as far away as your body can place them from the heart or brain. And something I kind of giggled at, it says having a hard time getting rid of that fat roll, it may have an emotional root. Oh, that was kind of neat. Quite neat. Says, it has been said that when there is conflict between reason and feeling, human beings will always side with feeling. It says many doctors are recognizing that a number of diseases are caused by emotional problems that link back to infancy and perhaps even in the womb. That is one thing I find extremely interesting, especially when it comes to infants, since I had an extremely traumatic birth with my daughter. For both of us, we actually have done what's called emotional code with her. We have someone local to us who is training to do that, and he allowed us to work with him for his certification in it. Not very many people are, but it works with the meridians and the energies in the body that can even be stored from thousands of years ago from ancestors in your bloodline. It is actually extremely interesting, to say the least. I'm not extremely well versed in it, but I do know the basics from having it done with my daughter. But it's really neat to see that happen. And I've actually had doctors physically be able to tell a difference with her joints, because she does have some joint issues. We don't really have an official diagnosis yet, but we do a lot to support her immune system, her musculoskeletal system, and just in general do what we can. And they noticed a difference with her joint mobility after clearing some things from her emotionally. So I find that really interesting. But it says oils pass into the emotional brain and bring us to things we have long forgotten so we can deal with them. When we clear out our emotional baggage, we can move forward. Gary says, thought equals frequency. Oils are registered in the body as intent or directed energy. When you apply an oil to your feet, it can saturate the cells within 60 seconds, stimulating creative thinking and pushing negative energy out of the cells and increasing your frequency. So typically, I cannot remember the standard human frequency right now, but I do know most of these are higher frequency oils. Typically, when you're thinking higher frequency oils, you're also going to be looking at tree oils. Lots of terpenes and sesquiterpenes in those. We can definitely get on a chat if you are interested in that afterwards. That's my jam, is the scientific side of it. So there's fun words to say too. So it says, forgetting the memories. People often ask me if they have an emotional release session, does it mean they won't remember the memory anymore? No, that's not true. You'll flush the pain of the memory out of your cells and the emotion that comes with it, be it anger, bitterness, sadness, etc. It may take dozens of uses of the oil to accomplish this. However, the memory of what happened remains. So having actually experienced this not on purpose, I do use, like I said, I use Inner Child in my sessions. And we didn't even actually go over some things, but we processed through other things while using the oil and practicing coping skills. And one session, it did come up, and I was like, not really worried about it. I mean, I don't have a better word for it or praise for it, but just I realized it was not a pain point for me anymore. It wasn't as comfortable as I would like it to be, but it wasn't something I could not process in that moment. It was very curious to me and very foreign, since I've used essential oils for four years now, a little over. But I hadn't used it specifically for emotional growth or healing. So it was just really neat to me to actually read this recently and see that that's what happened. Is that the oils were able to create that barrier in my brain while processing certain things and opening up and growing, so that when it did come up again, I wasn't triggered per se. I still remembered it and things like that, but it wasn't a fight or flight response when I did. And that was so big for me. It says there are two different types of emotional release: assisted and unassisted. Assisted emotional release means that you work with an aromatherapist or someone who knows the raindrop technique, which is a protocol with essential oils, typically done by an aromatherapist or someone trained to do it. I am not, but it says you do that with the emotional oils. I can go ahead, if someone would be interested after viewing this, I can try to study up on it and we can at least discuss it or have a class about it, but I'm not that familiar with it. Typically, I do know it's done to boost the immune system and help clear any toxins that are going on in the body. But past that, I don't know a whole lot about it personally. The emotions are like layers of an onion, and it can take dozens of times to peel each layer back when doing the emotional protocol raindrop technique. It says when an emotion is released, it can look a few different ways. It says, I've seen people start sneezing uncontrollably or start crying. Your body uses the excretory system to get rid of toxins, so you may even start sweating. And that also goes back to the kidneys and liver and everything else. So it's not mentioned here, but that would also mean you may have to tinkle. So for this session, she says she would do a raindrop opening with Valor, but instead of using oregano and thyme as the typical oils after Valor, she would use the Feeling Collection in order, first on the feet, then on the spine, closing with Ortho Ease oil to seal it in, and ending with White Angelica. I'm going to go ahead and skip past that because that just goes all into the raindrop technique with the other oils. The second type of emotional release is unassisted, which means you do it yourself at home. There are three different ways, like we already talked about, which is internally, which is the French model. And I didn't know that it follows different models until to looking at this. Topically, which it says is the British model. And then, of course, aromatically, which is German model. After about 15 minutes, your olfactory senses will become desensitized to any sense around you that you've been stimulated with, which is why if you're baking cookies and all of a sudden you can't smell them, but then you walk away and somebody hands you a cookie, you'll smell them again. So this actually suggests that says the most effective way to use oils with emotions to diffuse in 15-minute increments, and then leave the room every 15 to 30 minutes if you're running a diffuser constantly. I truthfully had never even thought of that. I diffuse every night and almost all day long throughout my house. Never really thought of it. And it says in here, it's like if you can't walk away, that's fine. But if you're really trying to process things and works through some things, you do need to just step away or go to another room, turn it off for a few minutes so that your brain is still responding to that oil within the time period you're doing that. It says a second but extremely effective way to use oils is topically, placing them on your Vitaflex points like we talked about. And it says your body has thousands of Vitaflex access points. So what it actually is it's where your organs meet your nerves meet in other spots. So your hands, your feet, like I said, your lower back. It says when you place an oil there, it shoots right up the nerve and goes to that organ. I do have an example of over 20 of the more common emotions, their companion oils and placements. It says for disgust, place Australian blue on your bronchial airways. It says awaken. For hopelessness, you can put it over your bones, which I found that one really, really neat. It says brain power for brain fog. Put it on your big toes or on the back of your neck. Cedarwood for survival mode. Put it on female or male organs, which don't put oils on your genitals, please. There are VitaFlex points that might be a little tender. So cardamom for self-pity, it says put it on the hip bone. Not wanting to be somewhere, it says citrus fresh, put it on the pancreas. These are really specific and I like it. Forgiveness for betrayal, put it on the gallbladder. There's that gallbladder again, y'all. Harmony for sarcasm, put it on the brain. as Donna kind of at me. Hyssop for swallowed emotions, put it on the throat. For feelings of unworthiness, jasmine on the brain stem. For disappointment, put joy on the throat. Joy is actually a big one for me personally. I use it over my heart most mornings or behind my ears or on my wrists and a roller. That was my gateway oil outside of my kit. That was the first oil I ever bought. And I have never, ever, ever let myself run out in 4 years. It has been a huge tool in my mental wellness little toolbox. So. Then we've got magnify your purpose. It says victim attitude. Put it on your chest and brainstem. For fear of completion, oregano over across your forehead. Peppermint for failure on the thymus, which we already talked about, is right up under your sternum. Peace and calming. When you're feeling argumentative, put it on the thyroid. For letting go, you can put sage over the bladder. Feeling disempowered, tea tree. It says put it on the T1 on the back of the neck. And nobody else is medical. T1 is one of your spinal discs. Thieves for feeling uncertain. Put it on the saliva gland VitaFlex points or take the vitality oil internally. So, and if you really, really want to get nitty gritty with it, you have one inside your cheeks. You could put directly on your mouth, which is considered topically actually. Might be a little warm though, because it's a hot oil. For feelings of being persecuted, you can use Valor over the kidneys. Vetiver for an overactive mind, put it around the eye. Never put oils in your eyes, ears, or nose. Those are those olfactory senses, and that is extremely sensitive. If you do accidentally get oil in your eyes or anything, carrier oil. Do not use water. Just grab you some coconut oil, some olive oil, whatever you have closest, and literally just put it over your eye. It works every time. I promise you. I have done it too many times to count. I literally got peppermint in my eye just a couple of weeks ago from my toothpaste at that. It splashed out of my Thieves toothpaste bottle straight into my eyes since my glasses weren't on. And I was like squinting to see, and I was trying to grab my coconut oil that I use to oil pull, and I was like, oh God, I'm gonna die. But after about not even 30 seconds, it started easing on up, and then about a minute later, I was able to open my eye and be fine. And then we've got white fur or any fur, because there's 2 or 3 furs, I think. I'm not quite sure how many. I'm more into the spruces, like Idaho blue spruce, Northern Lights black spruce. Those are my jams. I'm not as familiar with the firs. But for feelings of being inadequate, it says put it on the top of the head. Fear of wisdom, you can use ylang ylang over the pituitary gland. It says place. Sorry, those were all really neat. I'd read over them and just kind of skimmed, but I knew I was going to go over them in class for the ones I knew and didn't anyway. So that's really neat. This is the neat things about emotions is that it really doesn't require a medical degree to figure it out. If you were to sit and just list your emotions and like what you're feeling, you're able to grab an oil. Sometimes you really just need to sit and think about what you're feeling. I mean, how many times do we just, as humans, we're not wanting to go to work today because we've got a slight headache, and so we start screaming at our kid just because we just don't feel the best and we don't want to adult today, but then we take it out with anger. But really, it's feeling of discontentment. It's feeling of I don't wanna. Listening to that inner child, though, that's where that is. That's your inner child going, I don't want to do this. And so your adult is going, but we have to, so get over it. So then you're just angry. This is literally what I've done for the last year, you guys, in counseling. If this tells you anything. So a lot of the times you need to sit down, just think about what's going on in your head and why you may be experiencing this emotion, which actually kind of ties into the next little section, which is where teenagers can be a little more difficult to help. I see Donna shaking her head. She's got a preteen at home. It's a little more difficult because sometimes their root emotions aren't going to show up as their root emotions. It's going to look like disrespectfulness. It's going to look like defiance and all the negatives, when maybe it's just they're scared that they're a failure to you, or that their friends don't like them. So they're feeling like they don't have their own place. I mean, a lot of times with teens, male or female, really, it's going to show up as anger or resentment or things like that, when it's a lot more if you can get down to that root cause. And it says right here, it's like, go with what you truly think it is to begin with. See if they'll put it on their feet before bed, whatever correlating oil you're going to use with them. It says that if it doesn't work, you can go ahead and try another oil the next night. If you're not seeing any improvement whatsoever, or try it a couple nights and then do it change it up to see if that helps down the list of what may be bothering them. And at the same time, just try at least. I know I was not a teen that was but so open. Mine's only 2, but going on 20. Just try to have that open relationship. And I can also say with the 2-year-old, though, when she knows it helps, she'll run and grab the oils. So maybe that might be something to try with your teenagers. Get one that works for that emotion, and they may be more willing to talk through with you so that you can help themselves with oils. It says it's trial and error, which is really how it is with most any oil for any support. I actually have a friend that I met at a retreat recently, and she has the exact opposite reaction to joy than most people. She actually has the reaction more like it's release. She can't do it. She immediately starts, she can physically and mentally tell that her body is trying to process very, very hard emotions. And she is a widow who lost her husband when her children were very, very young, 10 years ago. And so she's not able to use joy often because it has a very strong effect for her. It's not joyful. It wants her to process through, her body wants her to process through those hard emotions. which she hasn't felt ready to do. So I'm about to cry thinking about my friend. But that's something that I just absolutely love, is how it's not going to react the same for everybody. You have to tweak it. You have to see the reactions you have, and that's physical or mental. I absolutely love Rhuda Violet oil for sleep. My husband has the wildest dreams and will not touch it. I mean, I know some kids, they will go bouncing off the walls with lavender, bouncing off the walls. They can't have it before bedtime. That's just different people react different ways. And I think that's beautiful, because we're all so different to begin with. But it's also just like Western medicine, it's not going to react the same way to every person. So really neat. It says oils for emotions, if I can read, are definitely underused. It says if you're experiencing something physical, like a mild headache that doesn't require a lot of thought, you break that oil out whenever you need it. But an emotion is so abstract that you may not pick up on it right away. And that ties back into, okay, so you're feeling angry, you're feeling stuffy, like what's going on? It you have to think about it. And I think that's true. That's why we don't always use oils for emotions, is that means we have to put in a little bit of work mentally. I mean, mental load is real. Any woman that sits here and hops on is going to know that. And men, but typically it is a more talked about subject within females. It says if you can't quite pinpoint the cause, but your family is being difficult, she likes to open up a book by Dr. Mean, and I actually forgot to double check what that book was. Maybe. Looking. Found it. It is Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils by Carolyn Mean. And I actually have that book. Funny enough, I just didn't realize she wrote it. That's actually a really good book. So in my notes, I told Donna about it earlier because I asked her if she knew. And I realized she talks about this amazing book, and it never clicked with me what book it was, even though I have it and have used it. Because I didn't recognize the author, and it only told me the author. So there we go. It's a really good book, though. So now I see why she's been suggesting it. But her book talks about how all the emotions tie to different oils, and that's actually where that list of 20 came from. But that sometimes you're going to have to dig deeper for that root cause. It says some kids and teens love a back rub, so maybe they'll let you rub their oils on their back, rub their feet. I know quite a few teens that would be like, rub my feet. I was one of them. But she says that if you can't get your teens to let you put oils on them, just sneak it in a diffuser. Or if you're like me, just get a roller and swipe it behind their ears. That's what I do with Ash all the time if she's not staying still for her oils. But she says some of the points on that list I talked about previously with the 20, it says like the thymus, you can't hold it. Oh, some of the points in terms of where to put oils on the teens, you can't easily get. So sometimes it's like you can also just use their VitaFlex points to get the organ that you're not able to actually rub it over. This says if she sees any issues within her family household, I know I knew what she was talking about. Like there's just tension in the house. Like y'all, we need to chill out. Says grab the oils. Um, an oil in the back of the neck can make so much difference for her kids, is what she says. And she says to be in tune with them. She also, Sarah talks about in here that a couple times a year she does an emotional oiling session with her husband. She literally, they just sit there and they go through the protocol together, or they go ahead and put oils on to air some emotions out and then support those emotions and their bodies with the corresponding oils after they've had a moment to talk. I thought that was really, really neat. But it says she first grabs an oil, gets it on them and up their nose even, and then sits down and just talks through a situation. The oil alone may give enough space for them to feel safe to talk. So be it her kids or her husband. I just thought that was really neat. It says there's one last component that she hasn't touched yet in her outline, and it's spoken word. And this is something I always thought was not necessarily silly, but I was like, oh, I can't do this. This isn't going to work, which is why it never did work, by the way. Well, it did, but not in a positive way. She suggests making sure you have what's called your way out, which is every emotion has an opposite emotion. So anger is joy, frustration is peace. So when you're applying an oil to help support a negative or unwanted emotion, find the opposite of it. Every morning when I put my Valor on, I go, I am strong and I can do hard things, because courage is what I lack. I fear that I won't be able to do it. When I put on joy, I say I am content and I choose to be joyful. Because there's days that I'm not. There's days that the deep dark pit of depression is just like, you suck. And I'm just like, yeah, I do suck, don't I? So no, I'm content. I will work and choose to be joyful. And sometimes I'm not joyful, but I'm also not stuck. And I started doing it and I wasn't consistent, and then I'd start doing it a little more. And at this point, if I see that my depression is sinking in a little harder, I'll go ahead and I'll tell myself, you're strong. You can do hard things. Like, so I thought that was really neat. Okay. Sorry. I thought my video ended for a second there. But Donna had just kind of out for a second. But yes, it's just have an opposite emotion to whatever that original emotion is, and creating a word, a mantra. Doesn't have to be out loud, just in your own head, just something that reassures your brain that you can move past what's causing you to struggle. And also, one of the ones she says is, I love and approve of myself. I trust the process of life. I am safe. Which I liked that one, even though it didn't personally apply. I saw where it could be really important for some people. Says, remember, it may take many sessions if you're working with the oils at home. We have talked about the physical application, and now we can talk about the process in your head. Half of all you do is mindset. And in my personal opinion, this is probably more than half on everything we ever do. It's you can have all the skill in the world, but unless you've got the right mindset to go do it, it doesn't get done. And it says, here's a 4-step process that you can use to start. 1, identify the pattern that is linked to the emotion. She uses an example of, when my husband talks about my father, it makes me angry. And then it says, understand the opposite side of my emotion. So the more physical side. It says, my husband's dislike for my dad makes me tense. So she can feel her body tense up when she's angry. 3, discover the way out of the emotional. What is the opposite of tense? Think about that. It's going to be calm, relaxed. Use the oils aromatically or topically, rinse and repeat. And that actually comes from Dr. Benjamin Perkis's book titled The Aroma Freedom Technique, which is another one I have and love. Both of those I definitely suggest getting if this is something you're interested in working more with. It says, his protocol takes you through the emotions, and it offers another simple topical and aromatic emotional release session you can do to process stored traumas. She also actually recommends another book. It says, so for the fourth and final book, I'd recommend an emotional release on emotional release. It's called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die by Karen K. Truman. This one I have not personally read before, but it says in these pages, she gives a few paragraphs you can speak over yourself if you need the words to say to emotionally release. So if you haven't done any kind of mantras or anything like that, this kind of will walk you through it in certain spots so that you are able to do that. So this is going to wrap up our feelings class and our course on emotional release. So you know where to get the collection. You can message me and get my link, or it's www.myyl.com/brelanning, BRELANNING. And if someone sent you, like a friend wanted you to come watch this or come with them and they didn't make it either, just go on back to your friend and they will be able to give you their link if they're already with Young Living. And that's just going to be the freedom release. There's the freedom release kit that has those oils for the emotions protocol. If you are going to be ordering from me after this, I actually do have a specific link if you would like to message me that is for getting a hold of your emotional oils with a with the 24% membership. I've already got it set up, so all you have to do is click the link and then you're able to add any of those oils that we've just talked about into your cart, which is a really neat new feature. So it says you now have the how, the why, and the science. You have the words. Now pause in the busy of your life and be consistent, even if your consistency is just a single oil. And define consistency based on what you can handle. But if you already have oils, we've got the knowledge, we've got the tools. Now we just got to use it. If you don't have the oils, we'll get them and then get it all over. All right. I appreciate Donna coming and visiting and joining me, and anybody who wasn't able to make it and is going to catch the repeat. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great rest of your night.